Welcome back to Quack Fab. In today's episode, we are going to take a break from Frankenstein, and I'm going to show you a story about a Hummer that I built from scratch, and hopefully that I will be able to create again, this time to completion and with a little twist. So a while back, I'm talking like a couple decades, I bought these plans to build a Hummer because I wanted to build an off-road vehicle. I bought them from this place, Rocky Mountain Coach Works. It doesn't exist anymore. There used to be a forum and everything, TremorMUV.com. I posted up my progress, but I never actually got to finish this build. And if my channel takes off, this is something that I want to get back to, except for I'm going to do a little twist to it. But you can see in these plans, it goes through, I don't know how much of these plans I'm allowed to share with you, because I don't want to get sued, even though the company's not in business anymore. But it shows you the angles to cut. It's got a materials list, how to build specific pieces, you know, what angles, what lengths, what dimensions, what metals to use per, you know, the rear fender section, the tailgate section. Let's see here. Yeah, just more of the same. It just goes through step by step and tell you every dimension you need to make for every section of the Hummer body. And you know, even the section that lines up with the hood. And these is dimensionally accurate to accept body panels off a real HMMWV Hummer, military style Hummer. But, you know, that's what you get when you're finished with the metal. But it's even got a thing in here on how to build a sheet metal bender. But anyway, that's something I'd like to get back to. But instead of making a 4x4, I'm going to make a slammed version. I still have my hood behind my car. I still have my Hummer hood behind my house. It's right there. It's a military Hummer hood. I bought it in Maryland. But I really like to build it. These Hummer plans were designed to be built on a K-Series Suburban frame. I picked this one up from a dude on Craigslist for $2,200. It had a stutter and a misfire under acceleration. The guy that I bought it from said he couldn't figure it out and he hated to sell it because it was his baby. I didn't have the heart to tell him what fate I had planned for it. I owned and drove the Suburban for over a year before I stripped the body off of it. The stutter was fixed with a new distributor. It turned out to have a cracked reluctor in the distributor. Anywho, the plans I bought showed you how to build the body and the windshield frame, but you still had to source an H1 Hummer hood. I found one on eBay for like $275. Keep in mind this was in like 2010-ish. The only issue was that the hood was located in Maryland and I lived in Ellesmere, Kentucky at the time. So I asked my wife if she wanted to go with me to pick up a Hummer hood in Maryland and swing by Washington, D.C. on the way. She was super excited about it, so we took an 1,100-mile round trip in under 24 hours after I had worked a 12-hour shift. We've seen a few sites in D.C., the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, Jefferson Memorial, and we stopped at Arlington National Cemetery before we headed back to Maryland to pick up the Hummer hood. I strapped it to the roof, flicked the ratchet strap, and said, "That's not going anywhere." Then we cannonballed it back home. First thing Monday morning, I ordered a pile of steel from my local supplier. For all the steel I needed for the project, it cost about $1,500. The steel was delivered a few days later, and as soon as the weekend hit, I got to cutting every piece I needed, so I could glue it together like a model car using my liquid metal glue stick. As with every project I do, I immediately cut my finger. So I wrapped it in a napkin and electric tape, stuffed it into a welding glove, and began tracing out arches for the window frame. I welded all the pieces together as per the instructions, and before I knew it, I had most of what would become the window frame. Next, I started the side tubs of the body. I set up some jack stands on the floor and used some shims until I got my platform perfectly level. I lined up and squared the tub rails and tacked them to the cross rails. I then connected the side rails together with triangulated floor supports. Then I measured, leveled, and plumbed the firewall area and welded it all together. Next, I turned my attention to the rear fender arches and inner rail extension pieces. Then I welded in some inner rails and triangulated support to create the fender tops. Next in line was a crossbar at the firewall with two long extension rails to the back that tie into the tailgate opening. These rails will eventually become the tunnel that will provide a place for the drivetrain to tuck up into. I then added the rest of the pieces to fill out the rear end of the body. Next was some downriggers that connect the inner tub rails to the top of the tunnel, and some triangulation for added strength that create the top of the tunnel and the bed floor. Next up was the front extension pieces that eventually became footwells, and I test fitted my windshield frame. I decided my Hummer was going to be an open bed truck version instead of the slant back style, so I built a rear cabin wall and added a space for a window. Then I added more pieces to my windshield frame and built some roof supports to connect the front windshield to the rear wall. With everything fitting nice and measuring square, I finally capped off and fully welded my windshield frame. The last piece I added was a crossbar that framed in the top of where the doors would fit. My wife decided to draw a picture of me smiling in the driver's position and a monkey to indicate one of our kids. There was one for her on the passenger side and another monkey in the back, but I couldn't find my picture of that. With the body basically ready for Hummer panels, it was time for the Suburban to meet her fate. We loaded up all the scrap metal into my brother's lowrider, and we hauled it to the scrapyard. The only thing left to do at this point was to put the body on the frame. I had my brother, cousin, and a friend help me lift the body and carry it onto the frame. It fits pretty nice if I do say so myself. And there she was in all of her glory. She's a beaut, Clark. But my excitement was short-lived. About 2 months before I tore the Suburban down, we got a new neighbor 2 doors over. From day one, they were a hassle. We lived in a cul-de-sac, and all the kids on our street would walk through front yards because there were no sidewalks. They immediately began yelling at my kids and other kids to stay off their property. Then they called the police on us for letting off fireworks on the 4th of July. Then they called the city on me for having an unlicensed vehicle, the Hummer, in my driveway. You see, I had a 1-car garage that was half full of a workbench, air compressor, toolbox, tools, etc. So up until this point, I had left my project in the driveway as I accumulated parts. I didn't have enough room in my garage for the Hummer project. I couldn't get it licensed either until it was finished, because it no longer had a VIN number and I needed to be able to drive it to the DMV in Frankfurt in order to get a VIN issued to it. At first, I decided to abandon making it into a Hummer and narrowed the body and bobbed the front and rear with intention of making it into a rock buggy. At least that way it would fit into the garage. I then became just plain uninterested and defeated and didn't want anything to do with it anymore. I eventually sold off the parts to minimize my loss. I did keep a lot of the steel and used it in various projects over time. I used some of it to make a winch mount and rub bumper for my brother's 4x4. I used some to make a rear sprocket shield for my four-wheeler. I bought this old Jeep for $400 and give it a redneck 4-inch lift with some of the metal. I just cut the spring perches off and welded 4-inch blocks between the perch and the frame. I then used some more Hummer metal to build a skid plate and a winch mount with rub bumpers that wrapped around into the fender arches. One of my most favorite things to do with the Jeep was to get it extremely muddy and park it in front of Karen Neighbor's house. I love that Jeep, and it is one of the few vehicles I regret getting rid of. The only reason I got rid of it was that the off-road park I used to go to, Bill's 491 Off-Road, was shut down because the owner passed away from cancer and the family sold the property. I traded the Jeep for an S10 without an engine that I swapped a small block Chevy into. I really wasn't vibing with the S10, so I sold it to my cousin. I still miss that Jeep. Anywho, I said all that to say this. I learned a lot and really enjoyed the process of building that Hummer, and I would love to give it another shot, and I hope that someday I get to. However, with the closest off-road park to me over 90 minutes away, my tastes sway more towards street drivable vehicles instead of purpose-built off-road vehicles. So I like lowered vehicles, street vehicles, fast vehicles, and this is kind of a combination of all of that. Here is a rendering I had ChatGPT make of a lowered wide-body Hummer that I would love to build. I'm going to close this out with a video that I made of my Jeep going through some deep water at Bill's 491 Off-Road. Thanks for watching Quack Fab. If you like what you see, please like, share, subscribe, and if we get enough subscribers, this channel starts doing well enough, I'll build that badass Hummer.